small glimpse of what Islam is. Because many of us have an idea and we think we know what Islam is. There's a lot of information out there on the news media, right? On Instagram, on Facebook, right? And just in the streets, people have an idea of what Islam is. Well, Islam is an Arabic word. It means submission, right? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that Islam is our very nature. It's not something that's foreign to us. As I close, I want to share with you this little saying that I heard. I thought it was profound. It's very simple, but it was very profound to me. The brother said, what you call a thing is less important than what it really is. Right? What you call a thing is less important than what it really is. Right? So we may call ourselves Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, Jew, Yoruba, I don't know all the different names of the different religions and what we call ourselves. But what's more important than what you call yourself is what God made you. And in the Arabic language, we put the stamp on that with the name Islam or Muslim, right? So even if you call yourself a Christian, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said a good Christian is a Muslim, and a Muslim is a good Christian. So I thank you all for hearing these short words this morning. As I greet you in peace, assalamu alaikum. Let's welcome our brother who's going to take us further into our program with a round of applause, Brother Lawrence Muhammad.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is indeed his true servant, the arisen and exalted Christ. I further bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan Muhammad is that divine reminder, servant and warner in our midst today. And in those names, I'd like to greet you with the greeting words of peace and of paradise of Assalamu alaikum. And those words simply mean peace be unto you. And we want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your schedules today to be with us and, just come in fellowship and vibe with one another. Yes, and so we don't intend on wasting your time. This is a very serious time in which we are living in. And, just as the subject matter of today is solutions for a better Black New Orleans, strengthening the family. And if there's not a strong family base, then this is why we are seeing all of the things that we are seeing, because the family unit is not as tight as it should be. Especially like, I'm not going to give my age, but back in the days, a few days ago, when I was a shorty, family was everything. And, family extended beyond the people in your house. And family actually extended beyond blood. So we have to get back to those types of environments and units so that we can bring ourselves back into the place where we should be. And so we thank you, family, for taking the time to come and visit with us today. And you are actually, yes, in fact, in Muhammad's Mosque number 46. Don't get caught up on the name Islam. Islam simply means peace. The righteous. That's you, right? So if you're in the church and you are striving to do what Jesus said to do and submit to the Father in his name, then you are a part of the righteous. And as a matter of fact, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad points out that there is a prophecy that 144,000 stars will make it out of this world. But that prophecy comes from the Bible. And so when you and I come together as Muslims and Christians and even agnostic and whatever, or Hebrew Israelites, or whatever we call ourselves, let's not get caught up in, as my brother Nuri says, religious gangbanging. Because the mosque is on this corner, the church is on that corner, the temple is around the corner over there, and about 3 more churches are around the other corner. We don't even talk to each other. But we all say we are doing the work of the Creator. So something is not right with that picture, because the scripture says God is not the author of confusion, but he's the author of what? Peace. Oh, peace. So Islam is just an Arabic word. Muslim is an Arabic word. The minister gave an example one time. He said, what if I came to you and asked you if you wanted some gelt? Would you take it or not? See, somebody had the right thing to say. What is gelt? But most people hear the word gelt and be like, ugh, I don't want that. But gelt is German for money. So if we just went on face value on what we thought the word meant and not what the word actually means, then we will be stuck out, as they say. So that's right, guiltless. So we are here to fellowship, family, because the family unit is greater than what we call ourselves. Are you with me? Yes, Minister Farrakhan said, you are not who you say you are. You are what you do. So what does our action show that we are? Are we kind to people? Do we want for our brother and our sister what we want for ourselves? Do I treat other people the way that I want to be treated? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that Islam can be summed up in this one phrase: do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. They call that the golden rule. Why golden rule? Why not the silver rule? Brass or copper rule? Because the minister says that gold is the best conductor of electricity. That's right. And so when it comes to the Spirit of God, the human being is the best conductor of the Spirit of God. It's like gold. And in the Bible, it says that there were some gold and silver vessels that had been stolen and taken away into a far-off country. And then they were given what? Strong wine and strange meats to eat. Until they fell down from their high place. And then God himself had to come to bring them up out of that condition. So the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. And if we lived by that, then the sisters can walk down the street with their garments on and don't have to worry about being ridiculed. Brothers can walk down the streets with suits on. Because you know, back in the days, once again, You ain't never seen no black man walking down the street with shorts on. Back in the days, every day, had on suits, nice little hat cocked to the side. Brothers were dapper every day. You going to the grocery store, you got to get dressed up, man. That's just how it used to be. You got to put on a suit every day. But if I see my Christian brother walking up the street and I'm a Muslim, we greet one another. We give peace to one another. Isn't that what Jesus did? Every time he came among his people, he said what? Peace be unto you. And so that's what we want to get back to, family, because that type of environment automatically reduces crime. That environment automatically reduces juvenile delinquency. That type of atmosphere automatically breeds love. And so if we can get into that mindset and start with just us who are in this room, because it starts at home. And if we can bring peace into our homes, then we go next door. And then the door after that. And then our block is at peace. And then eventually the neighborhood becomes at peace. So it starts with you and I, family. So you made a great decision to be here today and to participate in this. And so at this time, I'm going to get down and I'm going to introduce to you, to some, and present to others, our student minister here in the city of New Orleans. Because, you know, praise be to Allah, this is kind of like his brainchild. He's always coming up with ideas on how to better the community, you know, and he travels a lot, and he saw something similar in another city. He's like, man, we need to do that in New Orleans. And so here we are. And this is just the beginning. This is phase one. All right? So help me to bring up to the rostrum our student minister Willie Muhammad. Let's give him a round of applause. He got the pink up.
They say that salmon. In the most holy name of Allah, we thank Almighty God Allah for his gift of revelation. We thank him for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Jesus and the gospel. And we thank him for Prophet Muhammad in the Holy Quran. I can never thank Almighty God Allah enough for his raising up the most humble and honorable Elijah Muhammad, and for their preparation and leaving in our midst the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I also thank Almighty God Allah for each and every one of you all for everything that you strive to do, everything that you are doing. And I greet you with the greeting words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum. So we first want to thank every believer who extended an invitation to someone to come out. We thank you for doing so. We want to thank, if you're here for your first time, we want to thank you for coming out, because as Brother Lawrence and Brother Dwayne talked about, like being invited to our mosque meeting is not like being invited to like a regular church service, right? You tell somebody you're going to the mosque, that's about 10, 15 minutes explaining to them what the mosque is. Then after they talk about his Muslim, you got to battle all of that type of stuff. They killed Malcolm, they're doing all of this type of stuff. So there's a lot of mental and social barriers that people have to jump through to get here. But nonetheless, we thank you all for being here, right? And also, we thank our returning visitors, those who've been here before. I see some familiar faces. We have our brothers from the, help me out, I know the Lodge and the Shrine. Thank you. We have from both. And our brother Shaq is actually in the Final Call newspaper, if you all get the opportunity to check it out. And we have our sister. I see you. Good seeing you, sister, again. You're always a family. And everybody who was here, you know, we are not trying to change anybody's faith, you know, because the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that we're already Muslim by nature. And to be a Muslim just means one who obeys God, right? And so people have different titles that describe that. When you strip it all down, it just means one who obeys God, who's striving to submit our will to do the will of God. So we thank you all for coming. As Brother Lawrence talked about, the purpose of today's meeting is really to launch a series of lectures that we plan to do around the city in different parts of the city to inspire those who need to be inspired to get involved in reforming our community. Because when you hear people complain about the issues in the city, you oftentimes, or I have heard and noticed, that they say, oh, the mayor needs to do this, or the police needs to do this, or somebody needs to do this. But what I often hear missing from people who say such is, what is your role? What is their role, right? When I say that. And I think about this story where I heard where there was a man who came out of his house. He was upset at all of the problems that we see about in our communities, we hear about in the news. And he was so upset that he started being angry at God and said, God, why are you allowing people to sell drugs? God, why are you allowing crime and violence, all of the stuff that people complain about? And he fell to the ground, pounding the ground with his fist, angry at God. And when God just sat back and allowed his anger to subside. And when he said, well, the man was telling God in his anger, God, how come you haven't sent anyone? And after his anger subsided, God said, I did send someone. I sent you. And that's the thing that we have to understand. What army are we a part of? We have to be a part of that army of you. Is that right? And every one of us has something to do and to contribute. All of our contributions in trying to better the society or better our community doesn't have to look the same. But sometimes I found out in my experience that you have gangbanging that takes place. People like to talk about the religious gangbanging that takes place in religion, but you got gangbanging that takes place amongst community organizations, where some people want to beat their chest and say, y'all are not in the streets. We in the streets. We doing this. And when I talk to some people, when I've had the conversation, we don't see y'all. I said, man, like, what sense does that make? When we're in these housing developments, I don't look around and say, who's not here? Because if I know that you are about bettering the community, if you're not here and I'm there, that means you are here. And that's the spirit that we have to look at. But what begins to start hampering our ability to transform our community, unfortunately, is that most of our work to better the community, when we strip it away, is a cover for vanity. And so it may look good that what we're doing, but what's at the root of it? Are we doing it now, especially in this social media age where everybody got to take a picture of something and look at what we are doing? And if that's the motive to say this is what we are doing, then vanity is really, it may look good, but when you strip it away, it's empty. And that's why things are not being taking place as we want it to take place. Is that right? And sometimes when I look at the problems in our community, I say, well, God is probably going to allow us to suffer more and get so tired where we begin to put down our ego and our vanity and begin to decide that we need to work with one another. Is that right? So today is not, this is the first part of this series that we want to do, right? And we want to use this series, as I said, to inspire and to even reinvigorate. Because dealing with our community it can wear you down. Let's be honest about it. Is that right? Dealing with black folks in the condition that we're in, you will begin to like, man, I'm about to just focus on me and mine. So you begin to see people who are talking about resurrecting the community, doing this. Now they're talking about, I'm chasing the bag. You see black people sign up to be heads of organizations that are meant to better the black community, and then a month pass, 2 months pass, or a year, and what happened? Man, I had to give that up. Or they may give it up because they get tired, or they may develop health conditions. Because you can work, or we can work trying to help our people, and you turn on the news and see 3 people get shot. And if we're not careful, what we begin to start feeling is that my work is in vain. But anything that we're doing to try to better our community is not in vain if we are sincere. So some of us need to be reinvigorated. Is that right? And some of us also need to understand that we have something valuable to offer to our community. And we also want to use this series to bring attention to things that are taking place that are impacting us. And an example of that is the recent election of this governor. Jeff Landry is his name, right? Where I was talking to Brother Calvin yesterday, and they just passed a law where 17-year-old children are now going to be charged as adults. And I heard about that and understood what it meant, but I didn't think about an aspect that Brother Calvin pointed out to me, that these juveniles that are in a correctional facility not too far from here, now since they've passed that law, they're now going to shift them to an adult facility. So you have juveniles now that are going to be amongst adults. And if you study psychology, we have one of our brothers who's here, he's a therapist. They talk about the development of the actual brain of young children. And also how the development of most young, especially young males, if I'm not mistaken, maybe starts developing right around the mid-20s. Now imagine a child's mind, a male child in New Orleans who's been affected by trauma, who suffers from PTSD, right? So that further delays it. And now they're placed in an environment where I know from our time going in there, there's no rehabilitation. There's no rehabilitation going on in those prisons. When we were in the prison one time, myself and Brother Patrick, so when you go into this prison that they just developed, in the back you have the beds where they sleep. So here you would have the actual, is Jesus on the main line, huh? There was a television here, right, on the television up on the wall. On this side where was the restrooms, where it was only like a mid-sized brick wall stopping you from seeing their full bodies. So while we're talking to these brothers, I look and I glance. I was like, man, I know I didn't just see a naked lady on television. I was like, nah, they ain't showing that. And as we keep talking to the brothers, I look again. And they were in this prison watching movies that makes menace to society look like rated G. So if this is what you are watching, where's the rehabilitation? And so when they come back on the streets, they come back with a mindset that has just only been added to, that led them into the prison, but has not been corrected. So it shouldn't be no surprise we see what we're seeing, right? So Jeff Landry has passed that, this 17-year-olds. Then this is something that had me scratching my head, where you can be 18 in the state of Louisiana starting in July, and you can get access to a gun not needing a permit or a license. But if you go and Google online, you need a license to sell, you need a license to cut hair. You need a license to fish and a permit. That's right. And how is it that they don't realize that you should get some type of training before you put a gun in the hand of an 18-year-old? It's not by accident. Because what we're going to see as an increase in this violence, because most of the guns that are used in violent crimes are guns that are illegal purchases. So now if you're 18 and you can go and get a gun, you can go to some of those Punch-A-Train, those gun shows in Punch-A-Train, right? In Kenner. And you get the gun, buy the gun, and come back and say, somebody stole it. And now it's on the streets. We think that man doesn't understand that? Like, how is that going to reduce crime? But he has a greater plan, like he and other Republican governors have a greater plan, right? And from a group that I'm working with, I'll tell you this. there's also a greater plan to strip New Orleans of its governing powers, where they want to make a move where the mayor, you will no longer have a mayor, you will have a city monitor. So why is it that he's coming into office and now they're working to have a legislative meeting where they want to change the Louisiana Constitution? So as members of the Nation of Islam, we believe in voting, but we don't believe that voting is the end all.
That's right.
Because people will say, why you not voting? Our people died to get the right to vote. Our people died to set up independent schools too.
That's right.
Our people died to set up independent businesses as well, right? As I heard Dr. Umar, he made a very good point. He said our people died to get the right to vote, but the vote was used as one of the tools to help us to get liberation, right? So, but we have to begin as a people to start understanding how to use the vote. And if most of us are honest, when we go into those polls, most of us, we knew one or two people we wanted to vote for, but there were other people, and some of us, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Or he's a Democrat, or she's a Democrat. But if somebody asked us, what is her agenda? What is her stance or his stance on things that are important to us? So what we have to begin to start doing is we have to not just push to register people to vote, but we have to educate people on how to use the vote. And there are some times, brothers and sisters, that a no vote is a vote. Right? But what we have to pay attention to is especially those local elections that directly that impact us. But there are those of us who have an ability to communicate and connect with our people that we have to begin to start educating them. And we have to begin to start using our vote where, no, if you want our vote, we want something. And don't feel bad about it. And stop falling for people voting, getting our vote because they show up in our beauty salon. Or they show up in our church. Or they make a video with our favorite local rapper or singer. We can't be fools because in this current state that we're in, our vote to them is like a baby with candy. And they know how to get it from us. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So these are some of the things that we want to begin to start talking about. We want to have, when we have these lectures, but after these lectures, begin to start having town hall meetings.
Yes, sir.
Begin to start having panel discussions. Yesterday, I attended a mental health training that was one of the best trainings I've ever experienced. With Brother Calvin gave me notice about it, and I attended it, and they were teaching people how to be mental health? First aid mental health. Mental health first aid. Not that you know how to diagnose somebody and say, oh, you got bipolar or you schizophrenic. But you and I begin to start understanding how to identify what somebody has. Are they having some issues? And begin to direct them to the help that they need. Right? So what if we begin to start having discussions like that in the barbershops, in the middle of the courtyards? What would that do to reduce the stigma that people have about mental health?
Yes, sir.
About suicide? Is that right? Yes, our brother Shaq, in the article that he spoke about, he wrote a book talking about what exists as a rape culture. What if we begin to start having meetings, get him in the housing developments, get him in the prisons, where he can begin to start teaching men and talking to men, where we can begin to start, I ain't gonna say men, males, because there's a difference between a man and a male.
That's right.
Begin to start teaching males to go back and analyze our thinking to see about our negative views about women and how they're in our behavior and we may not even be conscious of it. Is that right? So these are some of the things that we want to do. We are looking for places outside of our mosque that we can have these meetings in a different location. So if you know locations that we can have, please let us know so we can reach out to those people to begin to start negotiating where we can meet there, right? So as Lawrence talked about, the title of this first series is The Solution for Black New Orleans, Part 1. And some people may have the thought, well, why is Black New Orleans? New Orleans is made out of all type of people. And that is true. And we respect everybody's contribution that they have done in the past, they're doing now, and will do. Yes. But we want to focus on us as a people. And to explain why we're focusing on this, I want to show you this scripture in the Bible. It comes from Solomon. And listen to what Solomon said. He was considered to be one of the wisest, right? Solomon said, "Look not upon me because I am black. Because the sun had looked upon me, my mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept." Here is a man that God used him and his father and made a promise with them that they will build the kingdom on earth for God. It was talking about him building a building, but that was symbolic of him talking about building the kingdom on earth. God gave him a mission, but he was being used by other people to do their mission. Instead of working in the vineyard that God had gave him, he was working in their vineyard. He was doing their bidding. Until he realized when he stopped and looked around, he said, man, I've been working in your vineyard and I haven't even kept mine. And now as a result, I don't even own a vineyard anymore. That's black people in America. We've been used as a tool and a slave to build other people's kingdom on earth. Right? All praises due to Allah. We take our skills, our education, our talent, and build their world. And keep their world up, and they only use their world to exclude us even more. But look at, as a result of us building their vineyard, look at some of these stats in New Orleans. The changing color of New Orleans. They're talking about gentrification. Listen to what it says. I'm going to read through some of this. It says, there's an association between neighborhoods that were damaged by Katrina and gentrification. Overall, they found out that, this was an Arizona State study, that hurricane damage was positively associated with the likelihood of a New Orleans neighborhood being gentrified. The same areas that they were telling us after Katrina, these are going to be green spaces because they're not fit for people to live. These are the same areas now that they are building homes that they're paying for cash, $500,000. Gentrifying, right? And they're saying as a result of that, there's now an inequity as it relates to home prices. If you buy a home, if you have a home now, your insurance is going up. Thousands of dollars. So now there are people who are selling their homes because they can't afford to pay the insurances. You think this is by accident? And what we sometimes trying to do, think that we can appease these people by saying, oh, we have cultural practices. You can't move us out of our community. They don't care about that. One of the ways that we can begin to fight gentrification is using our resources to buy homes. And in addition to that, if we have homes in these neighborhoods that belong to our family, don't sell them. Don't sell them. I know you get the text messages. You get a call like Los Angeles, like, who is this? Hey, we want to know if you want to sell your home on this street. And they buy them, and every time they buy them, where do we go? We go to the east, and before you know it, they're going to start going into the east. And before you know it, we'll be in Slidell, and they'll all move back here, right? But this is a result of us not doing our vineyard. Here's another one. Poverty, right? And what we are talking about today, the main focus, it helps to combat poverty. Listen what it says about poverty. New Orleans' poverty rate is 23.8% according to a 2020 report by Data Center, right? They say our poverty level is higher than other areas nationally. Then it talks about how, when it talks about the unemployment with black people, of course there's a disparity. There's an income disparity. You see unemployment disparity. Our black workers' unemployment is 15.3%, 3 times the higher white unemployment rate. Home ownership amongst black people is decreasing in the city of New Orleans. The large percentage of the evictions that take place in New Orleans are evictions of black people. Right? Let's look at health and insurance coverage. They say asthma, hypertension, and other chronic conditions are more prevalent among blacks in New Orleans. Obesity affects 42% of black residents compared to 33% of white residents. Because when you are stressed, as we talked about yesterday, you go grab that food, is that right? And some people looking at people who are struggling with drugs and say, oh, look at that addict. And don't realize that some of us are addicted to food. They may be grabbing the pipe or the fentanyl or whatever, but we're running to that table. And as we begin to start eating, now we begin to start having these health issues. But what we use to explain those health issues, we justify by this old wisdom that we say. We start saying, blood pressure runs in my family. We start saying blood pressure is hereditary. But what is hereditary is our bad eating habits that begin to start impacting us, right? Listen, life expectancy. They looked at life expectancy by zip codes. They said residents in the predominantly white zip code of 70124 are expected to live 25 years longer than those in 75% of black zip codes. What's in their neighborhoods that's not in ours? These corner stores. They call them food deserts. An abundance of, not only we had the fast food, but now we got the fast food, the Asian chicken, all of those spots, the places that sell ghetto punch that's like diabetes in a cup. And think about when you are stressed. Most of us, when we are stressed, when we want to eat something, we want something salty or sweet. And it begins to start doing this. And then we're working the jobs that we do have. Then when we get home, exercise. Man, I'm not about to do that. The only exercise I'm about to do is raising this remote or going through these apps and go to these apps on my iPhone, right? Infant mortality rate. Black women have more than twice the infant mortality rate of white women. Do you know when they look at infant mortality rate in Africa compared to America, blacks in Africa don't even have the large rates that we have here? Why is that? Then it says health income. Talk about insurance. White New Orleans residents, they're 10% uninsured, but when it comes to blacks, we're 14% uninsured. And they say black women historically are among the highest uninsured rates in New Orleans. They're selling insurance for like $20 a month. And we say, oh, I don't have money for that, but I have money to go buy the new Jordans. I don't have money to that, but I got a subscription for Netflix, Hulu, all the other ones. Our priorities are mixed up because our mind is mixed up. And somebody has to wake us up, right? Look at this. We just want to run through. This is a result of us not focusing on our own vineyard. Black men are arrested at the higher rate than white men in New Orleans. Black women are arrested 1.6 times the rate of white women in New Orleans. Black men comprise 88% of the jail population. And we're only 19% of the total population, right? Talks about factors contributed to it. Inequities in pretrial detention and policing. Black residents are more likely to face bail requirements, higher bail, and pretrial incarceration. Then they're locking us up. They locked us up for marijuana, and then they come and make it legal, and now they're selling it. Think about the game, right? So we get in, and we're targets. We are prey. Homelessness. Over 200 women and 700 plus black residents are homeless in the 2019. The majority of historically homeless individuals in New Orleans are black, formerly incarcerated, 10 times more likely. Black women are over 45 are vulnerable to homelessness. These are the things that are affecting us.
Yes, sir.
Hunger and food. Another thing that Landry did is he canceled this program saying that these children can get fed through the summer. 20% of New Orleans residents are food insecure according to 2018. The lack of access to healthy foods exacerbated by limited grocery stores. They gave a stat that they were saying how, like, the black community in New Orleans, they may have had like one every so many neighborhoods, right? The closure of urban farms in predominantly black communities worsen food access inequities. This is our condition.
Yes, sir.
Look at this, climate change. They were showing how in the early 90s, they filed a lawsuit against Hano because many of the housing developments were suffering from lead.
Yes.
And you know they made a correlation between high concentrations of lead in the body to violence. Do you know they did that in the 1990s and the Hano had to come and make adjustments? They came back in 2017 and still found high levels of lead in our communities. And we see the violence that is taking place. And we're like, man, why they're doing this, and never even realize that they are suffering from this, right? Then it goes this. This is interesting. Higher elevation areas are most likely to be gentrified post-Katrina. You know what that means? In the areas that don't flood, that's the areas that they've now gentrified and they live there. But in our neighborhoods, they ship us into those areas that flood, and then the flood insurance is sky high. Poor black communities are disproportionately exposed to air pollutants. On one of the neighborhoods in the city, they were fighting because they built the neighborhood on an area that was on toxic soil. The high school, John F. Kennedy, was built on toxic soil. Business ownership. Black-owned business, only 24% of the total business in New Orleans, but they receive only 2% of the total sales receipts. Right? Education. This is the sister who is the new superintendent. She said in a study they found out black and poor students are overly represented in failing schools. The majority of black school students, they attend low-performing schools.
Yes.
How is that? How do those schools like Ben Franklin and Lusher, they manage to keep the percentage down of black students?
That's right.
And what they do is they'll say, we have this amount, but they're talking about like a mixture of people who are black and white. So they say that's our black percentage. But if you have the best teachers, why not take the students who need the best teachers the most and bring them there? But you know how they get around it? They don't offer free public transportation. So that's one of the ways they get around it. Then they have what they call the lottery system. And then they shift all of these children to this one area, right? But there are things, brothers and sisters, that we have to do. There are things that you and I can do when we leave here, especially with the school system. We know that the school systems are what they are, but that does not excuse us as parents for sending our children into those environments not prepared. You should not send your children into a school and they don't know how to read before they go to that school. Because if you do, they'll be forever trying to chase learning how to read. Your child should not have a $1,000 cell phone and don't have a laptop at their house. Right? We have to begin to start making our children understand that education is important. That starts in the home. But some people think that you send your children to school and the teacher is going to fix everything. There are things that we have to do. Just setting an expectation. There was a man who was 98 years old on Oprah Winfrey's show. He learned how to read at, I think, at 98. If I'm, or maybe 103 he learned. It was late in age. None of his children knew that he couldn't read. And they didn't learn that he couldn't read until they had finished, like got up and they were in college. And when Oprah asked him, how didn't you know he didn't know how to read, or that he couldn't know how to read, right? He said because every time they came home from school, he would always say, what do you have to do for homework? Show me what you learned today. They'll give him the paper, and he would just look over it and give it back to them and say, now explain that to me. And just because he put that type of expectation, they knew that they couldn't go home telling their dad that they didn't learn anything in school. That's a simple thing that we can do. Is that right? That's a simple thing that we can do. Fighting obesity, the Mosque Muhammad in the book How to Eat to Live. It's a simple book that you can get and begin to start learning how to use simple things. You may not subscribe to all of it, but if you just say, I'm not going to eat pork, that will increase. There's one article. And when you see it's us running in there. But the people that you see, they are now eating healthy because they had an elevation in consciousness. Of course, we're going to keep running to Manchus, eating all that greasy chicken. If we never done any type of research to see how that negatively impacts us. As we grow here, we'll begin to start having a new way of thinking. Is that right? Now listen, I always lay the base to get to what I want to say. And this is what I want to say. I could have done a lecture and have all these theoretical things we could have done. But I want to focus on something that each and every one of us can leave and start doing, not tomorrow, but right now. And the area that we want to talk about where it focuses on is strengthening the family. If you take an opportunity and just go and Google what the research says about the impact of a strong family on juvenile delinquency, it will blow your mind. And this is something that all of us can begin to start doing. If you look at this Bible, as bad as Satan is, do you know what Satan's first attack was on? His first attack was on the family. And when the Bible describes him in the book of Genesis, it describes him as a snake. He wasn't even a dragon yet as in the book of Revelation. But the very beginning, even in his infant stage, he knew that I had to break up the family. And if I break up the family, then I can ensure my reign and my rule for a longer amount of time. And when you get to the book of Revelation, by that time, he has broken up the family, but even as a big dragon, and I'm not talking about a real dragon, that's symbolic. It's talking about somebody in power that can drag people down, right? But look at this. Even as a dragon, even as the family was disrupted, he was still waging war on the family, even in the last book of the Bible. He was still waging war, and it was the woman with the child with no man. But even that, he still wanted to make sure, even though I have taken the man out of your life, I still want to come at you. Because I want to even take away the child that's coming from your womb. That's how valuable you are as a woman. Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that you are the co-creator with God. That all of our prayers, that when we pray, all prayers are answered through the womb of a woman. Every person that has come to this earth, that has done something to improve this earth, came through you. That's right. Jesus came through you. Yeah. Moses came through you. Prophet Muhammad came through you. Dr. King came through you. So a part of us understanding the value of the family is you understanding your role and how great your role is and what you can do. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So when we look at this, the Most High Elijah Muhammad goes further in the history that after we gathered the Caucasian up and brought them into Europe, after they came out of Europe, their very first attack of the original people in the homeland was with the family. They told their women to go into the homes and begin to start spreading lies and making trouble amongst the righteous, causing us to fight and kill one another. But their first attack was to disrupt the what? Home. There's an African proverb to show that our ancestors understood this. They said the ruining of a nation begins in the homes of its families. So any effort that's meant to better black people, it has to be focusing on strengthening the family.
Yes,
Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
So, listen to what the Honorable Minister Lord Farrakhan said. Let me go back to this. He said, if we are not concerned about family, then we are not concerned about our people and our nation. If we have a weak family, we have a weak nation. And if we have a strong family, we have the potential for a strong nation. How do we build strong families and make weak families into stronger ones? Right? Strong families, brothers and sisters, begin with strong and healthy individuals. Strong, healthy, healed, and wholesome individuals. Because all of us are brought here on the planet Earth according to Almighty God Allah in the Quran. Look at the bold part. He said we are complete in make but incomplete. That means that every one of us as a human being, there's something that we have to work on. All of us are brought here on the planet Earth. There's some issue, some problem that we have to personally work on. But the minister asked the question when we look at this, how do we get to be complete, right? Most of the problems, brothers and sisters, that we bring into relationships and bring into our families that destroy them, they come with us. Most of the problems that destroy families and relationships, they come with us. Because what often happens is that we find human beings that have not done the necessary work of self-improvement before they decide to take on a mate. There are sometimes you have one person that has done the work and you have one person that has not done the work. But oftentimes in Satan's world, you have two people who have not done the work. And it's a train waiting to what? Happen. Is that right? So when we look at this, from these underdeveloped human beings, children come out of that environment and they're living in a toxic environment. Most of us begin to start learning how to interact and work with other people based upon what we see and observe in our homes. Most of our views about women have been influenced by our father's interaction with our mothers. And some of us don't have no standard because we never even saw our fathers and our mothers interact with one another. So we start off from a disadvantage. Same thing with you. And in that absence, where we're trying to find out how do I understand male and female dynamics, we turn to the music. Yes. We turn to television. Yes. We turn to these magazines. Yes, sir. Or then we turn into the street where it's the blind leading the blind, and then it begins to be gospel. And we wonder why we have the toxic environment that we have right now in our relationships. We lack the guidance, right? Yes, so when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said the following. He said, how do we become complete? And he gives some very great guidance. He says, by being fed and nourished, food develops the body. Words develop the mind. Just as we must eat the right food to grow right physically, we must read right from the right material to grow our minds properly. This is an indicator to show us, brothers and sisters, that this is why we can't spend our time taking in cheap material. That's right. As a human being, we can't spend hours on some social media app and the only stuff we're watching is this low down negative stuff. Human beings fighting one another. Right. All of the degenerate stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We can't spend hours watching movies that do nothing that feed us. So if it takes food to nourish the body, what nourishes the human being to help fulfill that incomplete side of us is the pure word of God. That's the first. But it's also any body of knowledge that we can use and read that can begin to start helping us become a better person. Yes, sir. What have we read? Think about yourself. In the last month, have you read anything that helped you to become a better person? In the last week, have you watched anything that its purpose of helping you to become a better person? And if we have not, let today be the end of us not doing so. Right? Because they say what goes in comes out. I heard a preacher say what's in the well will come up in the pail. If all we are taking in is filth and indecency and stuff that's antisocial behavior, we shouldn't be shocked when we see it at the family reunion. We shouldn't be shocked when we see it in the church or in the mosque or whatever, because people are only going to function off of what they know. Because when you know better, you do better. But if we're not doing better, that's an indication that we don't know better. And as it relates to black people in America, the chosen people of God, it was already prophesied. Where God said to his prophet, my people die from a lack of knowledge. Then he said because they reject knowledge. Here we were deprived of it, and then when it comes, we've been so used to not having it, now we reject it. So what goes viral online? You post a positive stuff, 1 or 2 likes. Post somebody doing something crazy. You go home, your grandma, and say, look what up, baby, look what I saw. Because they have reduced human beings, and I'm not being an insult to us, they've reduced us to the level of swine, where we feel comfortable only being in the low level of stuff. We want the mud, right? Or now they try to dress it up, they say, bring me the tea. So the material that we read should put us on a process of self-improvement, right? And with this process of self-improvement, we'll begin to start developing a proper view of ourselves. I wear glasses. You begin to start wearing glasses when your vision is not 20/20. And glasses help to correct it, not correct it, but it help to substitute, make up for it. So if we are complete yet incomplete, that means we can't even properly see ourselves. Right? So that's why when Jesus came, people use the scripture, but what Jesus is teaching, a principle of self-improvement, when he say, don't worry about the splinter in your brother's eye, take out the plank in your eye. You know, if I stood on a corner of Downman and Chef, you can see me holding a plank. You can't see me holding a splinter. So what he was saying is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, that the greatest battle that any of us can ever engage in is the battle with self. And that's the battle we don't want. They give all these medals, Purple Heart and all of this stuff. Where's the medal for somebody that has mastered self-improvement? Where's the battle with somebody that has went to war with the Satan of self? Where's the battle of someone that's looked in the mirror and said, man, I got to improve on that? But this is the process. Until we master the stuff inside of us that all of us have, we won't get the strength to master the larger giant outside of us. And this is one of the spiritual meanings in that story about David and Goliath. When David got ready to face Goliath, he wasn't afraid. If you go back and listen to what he said, I've already slayed a lion and a bear with my own hands. In the area where he was at, there were no bears. So it can't be talking about a man slaying a bear. He was a child. But could that story be talking about when you look at a lion? There's this story I read about this Indian guru. He was called a tiger guru. And these young boys went to his house and they said, man, they wanted to meet him because he was known for knocking out wild tigers with his bare hands. And so when they went to go knock on the door, he opened the door. They said, man, you the tiger guru? He said, yes. They were like, how do you knock out tigers with your bare hands? He said, knocking out tigers with my bare hands is easy. He said, the only difference between me and you is that you see it as a tiger and I see it as a kitten. But then he went further. He said, knocking out tigers that roam in a forest or a jungle is not the real challenge. He said, the real challenge is, can we knock out the beast that's in our minds? That's the real challenge, right? So all of us, like David, have that lion. That lion is only symbolic of that fiery side of us, the low desire side, that beastly side that's not ruled by intellect, it's ruled by appetite. Ooh, I want this. I want that. And that's the side that makes us ignore the God voice in us. So David saw that in himself. In order for him to know that, he had to look within himself. But if he's spending all his time looking for somebody else's lion, he don't see his own. When you look at bears hibernate for a portion of the year. Maybe the bear that he had to deal with is that he had to keep his eye up on old vices. That as a result of him slaying that lion, he subdued it. But if he got too arrogant and too comfortable, that old bear, that old vice can pop up. But after he did that, all praises due to Allah. After he went to work with himself, he then realized that there was nothing outside of himself that he couldn't defeat, even if it appeared to be larger than him. All of us have our bears and our lions. But the reward of it is, if we fight it with God, we get strength and we get the ability to accomplish and overcome whatever it is that we face. That's why self-improvement is important. Is that right? But if we don't self-improve, brothers and sisters, it hinders us from doing another great aspect that is needed that helps us to have strong families. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said the following. He says, strong family is built upon a strong relationship between male and female called husband and wife. But if you and I haven't done the work on ourselves, it impacts our ability to select a proper mate. We end up selecting mates from a standpoint of our own personal hurt. We select a mate in trying to fulfill a gap or a void that was left in us by our father not being there, or not having a relationship with him, or our mother she being there, but she's so emotionally drained, she couldn't nurture us the way that she wanted. We needed it. So we walk around looking for something to put in that hole, to fill that void, and we don't even realize it. And we dress it up and say, oh, I want a high-valued man. No, what you really want is that to heal from your father not being present. Well, I want a woman that loves me. No, what we really need is to first heal from that gap by my mother not telling me how valuable I am. And we walk into these relationships with all of this mental and spiritual baggage that nobody sees. It's covered up because he looks good. It's covered up because of her physical shape. And then when we get there, we put the mask on. Then after a while, like with Halloween, you ain't wear the mask all the time. We take it off. Then we wake up and like, yo, who is this person? Or one day we wake up in the mirror. We wake up and we look in the mirror and say, yo, who is this person? Who am I? And we don't realize that we made a decision to find a mate when we didn't have a full understanding of ourselves. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan used this example, all praises due to Allah. He said, using a principle of multiplication. He said, if you are a 2, not on the scale like you're a 10 and all that stuff, but if you are a 2 and you want a relationship on the level of a 10, using a principle of multiplication, we know that you have to multiply 2 by what to get 10? A 5. But if you and I have not done the work and we don't know that we are a 2, but we said we want a relationship on the level of a 10, we multiplying ourselves by all type of stuff. By 8, we getting way over what we wanted. We multiply by 10, we got 20. And we get a person that is way more than what we wanted. But oftentimes we end up multiplying ourselves by something that is lesser. And we get less of what we want. But we do that and we continue to do that as long as we don't want to look in the mirror and begin to say, where do I need to heal? Right? But if we want to say, listen, I'm like this because mom. I'm like this because of my daddy. And that may be true. Not that you are like that. That is no excuse to continue being like that. Because guess what? Our parents were incomplete as well. They did the best that they could with the knowledge that they had. So we can't blame them. And that's why Allah says in the Quran, he says, lower the wing of humility to our parents. They didn't know. But at some point, we can even take whatever disadvantages or negatives that we experience as growing up with that type of parental relationship and make it into a plus. But in order to do it, we got to look at it and say, yes, my father was not there. Yes, my mother was not there. But I'm not going to allow that experience to continue to define and shape me. Right? We have to do that if we want to heal. And the minister goes further, and when we then begin to start doing that, then we can bring children into this union that are healthy. They don't have to be a new version of our own drama. Because they already come into the earth with their own challenges. Then we don't have to project our fears and our disbelief and our doubt on our children. We don't have to feed fear in them. Right? So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said this. Look at what he said. I want to read this. He said, neither male or female can fulfill their relationship to each other until they are first properly connected to the source of all creation, which is God. This is why the divorce rate is so high and the dissatisfaction rate in relationships between the sexes is even higher. The natures of male and female are different, but they are meant to complement each other. Yes. Right? Go to this next page. He says, in the absence of knowledge, the different natures of male and female can work destructively against the self and against the union of both. You and I are made differently. You look at the physical difference between a man and a woman's body is also just an indicator of how we're different mentally and spiritually and emotionally. We different. And we don't mean any harm. We just different. She don't see stuff the way we see stuff, and we don't see stuff the way she sees stuff. We don't hear stuff the way she hears stuff, and she don't hear stuff the way we hear stuff. But nonetheless, we don't factor in those differences, and we jump into these relationships. Understanding that man and woman, we are different. Right? So he says, but in the absence of knowledge, the differences that are meant to complement one another begin to be destructive. He says the fundamental knowledge that is absent in male and female relationships is the knowledge of how we should relate to God and each other. But we already start off because as black folks, what we've been given as religion came from our slave masters. We already starting off. We may not realize that that white Jesus that we believed in impacts our relationship. We don't believe that. We don't believe that growing up and they telling us that don't put your faith in man, don't put your faith in human beings because the flesh is weak. We don't realize that impacts our ability to come together, right? He goes further. It is our disconnection from God is that at the root of the failing and improper relationships between man and woman. This is a very deep problem in the relationship between the black man and women. One of the major crimes perpetuated against us when we were brought into slavery was that a true and proper relationship between us and God was severed. You and I cannot get a proper understanding of God from the people that enslaved us. You cannot. I know we believe we can. We cannot. We cannot. Right? And if we are battling, anytime, sometimes when you hear slavery, I always got to use this analogy. You hear people that start saying, oh, that was in the past. But here we live in a world that's awaiting the return of the Messiah because of what they said a man did thousands of years ago. Because he ate a fruit off a tree. So how could what Adam did allegedly over 6,000 years ago affect the world today, but what you and I experienced a couple of centuries ago don't affect us? Though you still hear children getting up and they calling each other nigger? Do you still have children, they growing up talking about dark skin, light skin? That's an indicator that we are sick. But as long as we fall for this trick to make people think that we need to get past slavery and don't learn about it, you and I can never heal. If you brought your phone to AT&T today or whatever you had and it was broke, they're going to start asking you questions about how it was performing in the past. You go to the doctor, why are they asking you about your family history? Because they understand the past impacts the present. And if I can understand what happened in the past, I can affect what happens in the present and begin to influence what happens in the future. So how you and I think that we can't do that, right? So he goes further. The slave master stood in the place of God and made us relate to him as master in the place of God. To this very moment, no matter how much we say we believe in God, Jesus, and Muhammad, many of us subconsciously relate to whites as master and God, and God is just a word we use. Think about that. God is just a word we use. Right? You can go get that in the book where the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about how to fix the moral decline in America, how to fix the public school system, and a lot of other stuff, right? So when we know each other as individuals, brothers and sisters, we have to examine ourselves. We have to study ourselves. We have to sit down and go through all of our past relationships. What caused that relationship to fail? But don't say what the person did. Look at how we contributed to it. What didn't I do? Because we quick to say it didn't work because she did me this or he did me this. But what was it that we didn't do? Do we find a pattern in our relationship? We didn't stand up for ourselves? We didn't raise the bar that I'm not going to accept this type of behavior? Then what is that connected to? Right? So if we can't come together as whole individuals, then that also impacts the quality of the actual family, right? So first we have to begin to start healing those wounds, right? That exist between a family dynamic. And sometimes it is, we may not get that apology from our fathers or our mothers. But sometimes in our mind, we have to just say, I forgive them because they didn't know. And as of today, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Go and say it. I remember the first time I told my father I love him, I wrote it on a piece of paper. And I gave him a Father's Day gift. And in the paper, I wrote it, I said, listen, I no longer hold you accountable for you and my mother not being together. I said, I forgive you. And that began to be healing for me. Is that right? My praise is due to Allah. So listen, the whole purpose, and I hope I stress this, is one of the major things, it starts with the family. And that's family as it relates to mother, father, grandmothers, everybody, right? Everybody that plays a part in that family dynamic. Because some of us now, the ideal is that we're together with the spouses and our mates, but the reality is for most of us, we're not. So those unions don't exist, but you still have the child present. Listen to what the stats say about the power of a family. It says if today was 1970 and the family structure was still strong, 643,000 fewer children each year will fail a grade of school. 1,040,000 fewer children each year will be suspended from school. 531,000 fewer children each year would need psychotherapy. 453,000 fewer children each year will be involved in violence. 515,000 fewer children each year will be smoking cigarettes. 179,000 fewer children each year will consider suicide. 71,000 fewer children each year would attempt suicide. Just from the family, right? Just from the family being together. And we should not, this is one of the reasons why Satan attacked it at first. Now, there's a lot we could have went into this, but I wanted to close just giving us 3 practical things that we can do. Just 3. Y'all all right? Yes, sir. As it relates to family, right? Especially if we're married and we have children, if you're not married or whatever, even if you don't have a spouse and you're raising children by yourself, look at if we could just strive to say we're going to start having dinner together as a family. You say dinner, now man, how are we talking about fixing New Orleans? You talking about having dinner? Look what the studies show. I mean, everybody is in the household. We eating to at least. Can we at least say we're going to try to do it at least twice a week? I ain't getting no response from the brothers. Whoever we consider our family is, at least twice a week. That means turn the cell phones off, turn the TV off, and we only gonna focus on us and the food, right? Twice a week. Get everybody in there, because when we came up, my mama would fix the food, we grab our Kool-Aid, grab whatever, and we right in front of the TV. My daddy's somewhere else, she's somewhere else. And think about all of those moments we missed at the dinner table, right? Look at what this research says. Research by the National Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse of Columbia University consistently finds that more often children eat at dinner with their families, they're less likely they are to smoke, drink, or use illegal drugs. Think about that. From sitting down eating dinner. Look at other specific benefits. They say that everyone eats healthier meals. Because now it begins to be something, let's cook. Then your children may want to cook, because some of them are cooking already. It's healthier meals, right? Children are less likely to become overweight and obese. Children are more likely to stay away from cigarettes. They're less likely to drink alcohol. They won't likely try marijuana. They're less likely to use illicit drugs. School grades will be better. You and your children will talk more. Children's vocabulary is increased. You'll be likely to hear about a serious problem. Children will feel like you are proud of them. There will be less stress and tension at the home. Just if we ate twice a week, at least twice a week, that's something that we can do. We can start, I don't know if breakfast is already, we can do that today. Yo, we gonna all eat. They may, listen, we eating together. But they'll love it, right? The other action that I want to mention, I think I passed it up, as it relates to this, we talked about how the family structure is, in some places, is separate, right? So now you have mothers and fathers who are co-parenting. And I know some people who co-parented, they don't even talk to the person that produced their child. They send a text. The relationship is that bad. So the children are sitting back watching, damn, mama and daddy don't even talk. Oh, I know how that is. I remember my graduation. I'm sitting on the stage like, Lord, don't let my mom and my daddy meet up here. It's going to go down, right? But it's simple. There's a bunch of stuff that we can do, but here's a simple thing. And some of us may have not done this. At least make a commitment to say, I will not speak negative about the mother or the father of my child in front of my children. And if we've done it, because we're not perfect, go back to the child and say, listen, I know you heard me say some rough stuff about your mom. I said some rough stuff about your dad, but I want to let you know I apologize and I should have not done that. What does that do? It's teaching them what not to do when they become children, become parents. Right? And then if we have not made that mistake, keep doing what you're doing. To say, listen, I'm not going to do that. Teach somebody else and say, man, you got to stop dogging the mother in front of your child. Right? I ain't going to get to the part to say try to at least get on a harmonious level. That takes some work, right? But at least say, I ain't going to dog him out or her out in front of my child. If he get on my nerves, she get on my nerves, and go to the room and cuss. But don't do it in front of the child. And it's important, because some people will leave here and say, I'm not going to do that. But no, it's important to go back to the child and apologize. It's also teaching them not to be so big that you can't say when you made a mistake, right? The last thing is I talk about. Dear family, if we were here 1,400 years ago during the time of Prophet Muhammad, dealing with all of the stuff that we were dealing with, and if I knew Prophet Muhammad and said, there's a man that God has given revelation to, and you believed it, you'll want to meet Prophet Muhammad. That's right. You'll want to hear like, man, let me speak to the prophet. I need some guidance. Yeah. If we were here 2,000 years ago during the time of Jesus, and I say, yo, I know Jesus. You know Jesus, bro, I need to get some guidance. Is that right? If we were thousands of years back during the time of Moses, Noah, and all of the others, you would want to get some guidance from them. From our belief as members of the Nation of Islam, we believe that God has a servant on earth today. We don't believe that God stopped sending servants, right? And we believe that there is a man that's here today that's connected to a man that had a mission. A part of his, it was a small part of his larger mission was to repair the family. In the book of Malachi, it's the last book before you get to the New Testament. I know some of us may in the Bible, we may not. Between the book of Malachi and the first gospel of Matthew is a period of 400 years. They call it the silence of God. Why is it 400 years? And what people were in bondage for 400 years. But in the book of Malachi, God says before this 400-year period that I am going to send you my messenger. His name is Elijah, and God says I'm going to send him from my face. Now, if you're familiar with the Bible, some people were trying to say that John the Baptist was Elijah. When they talked to John the Baptist said, I'm not Elijah. When they talked to Jesus, Jesus said, I'm not Elijah. Then they altered the scripture where they have somebody saying, Jesus said John the Baptist Elijah has come. It's John the Baptist. But remember, John the Baptist said, I'm not that one. So that means that Elijah had not yet come. It is our theological belief that this Elijah in the book of Malachi is the honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, check it out. It says this Elijah, he comes. It says that he comes to turn the hearts of the children back to the father, and to turn the hearts of the father back to the children. And as I talked about last week, where was the mother? What mother is not present when her children is there? Especially when God sends his servant. You know when they talk about God, y'all there before us. You mean to tell me God sends a man, the same man he sent to a widow who was raising a boy without a husband, and now the woman is nowhere present? But he sends this Elijah, and this Elijah is coming to turn the hearts of the father back to the children. That means he's coming to a people where there's an issue between the father and the children. He's coming to a people where the father has either been physically absent or he's there physically, and emotionally and spiritually he's not there. So it's like women of that time, you don't have a husband. You're like a widow. So people marvel at the Nation of Islam's ability to transform black men. People, why is it that this Elijah Muhammad is the teacher of a man and the only man in history that was able to call 1 million black men and 2 million showed up? And then when they showed up, he didn't give them a pledge to say, worship me. He gave them to take a pledge that they go back to their homes being a better father. They go back to their neighborhoods being a better husband, being a better son. Could it be that we are in the midst of the people that fulfills that? Could it be? See, we like to talk about the scripture that's all in the past. But the Most High Elijah Muhammad says that this book is talking about right now. But they have made us worship the dead. They called us niggers, and the word nigger just means mentally dead. So now we worship the dead. We idolize all our black leaders who are dead. And one time I was teaching my daughter about black leaders, and I had to pause. She said, "Is he alive?" I said, "No, he's dead." "Is he alive?" "No." I said, "Man, I need to stop and start balancing this thing out with people who are alive, right?" And listen, it would be a disadvantage for me to stand here and now tell you that we have one that's alive today, that loves us more than we love ourselves, that loves us so much that he has sacrificed not only his family, his own health. That we see Minister Farrakhan standing before us speaking for 3 to 4 hours and don't know that sometimes he's done it in great pain. Here's a man, when they're trying to write us off, he's saying my people are not savages. My people are not predators. The black woman is not some degenerate woman. She's the second self of God, the co-creator of God, and telling us to respect it. Is that right? So listen to these words and we close. Listen to what he said. He said, the Million Man March, I'm going to read it. He said, we'll never rebuild the family without starting where Allah God started in the beginning. He started by our creation or making of the man and woman. Therefore, the Million Man March and the Million Woman March was the first step in the process of rebuilding the black man and woman. However, unless we destroy the effect of white supremacy on our men and women, we will not be able to make man and woman again in the image of likeness of our Almighty God Allah. White supremacy and its resulting racism has poisoned the systems of religion, education, justice, governance, and economics. Until there comes from Allah God that which is able to penetrate the heart and the mind of the black man and woman and destroy the mind that produced white supremacy, we will never be able to build a family that properly reflects the values that Allah God desires manifested among us. There's no school of higher learning that can help us in this regard. And some people say, I ain't affected by white supremacy. Yeah, right. I don't know, if you celebrate Halloween and you tell your children, we going over there to the white neighborhood, they got the best candy. That's white supremacy. You got a white Jesus hanging in your house, that's white supremacy. If you say stuff like, don't bring your car to no black mechanic, they're gonna mess it up, that's white supremacy. Don't go to that black neighborhood, that's white supremacy. And that's the disease, that's the Satan, that's the demon that has to be cast out. So I want you to do this for me. I want you just to take an opportunity, scan that on the people. There's an article. This is the third thing I want you to do. That you would at least agree to read this article that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did talking about family and children. Now, some people ain't breaking out their phones. So those who, you take out your phone, you take the camera out, you put it on camera, you don't take a picture, you hold it up, and you're gonna see this link and click on it. The minister is talking about family. I want you to read that article, and in that article we put questions, and I want you to read that article and you answer the questions and have a discussion with yourself. And let me know when the next time we see you if that article helped you. Can we do that? Yes, sir. First thing, can we have dinner at least how many times a week? Twice. The second thing is, can we go and tell our children if we've made this mistake, what we're going to tell them? I what? Apologize. Yes, sir. And I won't do that again. Yes, and me and your mom are going to be, me and your father are going to be working for the benefit of you together as a team. Yes. Right? And the third thing, I want us to read this article. Thank you, and may Allah continue to bless each and every one of you. I'm going to do the announcements. We'll be real quick. So listen, dear brothers and sisters, this is our acceptance portion of our